podcast. My name is William Ezel, and today, I should be a little shorter episode. We're going to recap the first two games of opening night NBA. First off, we had Nets Warriors, and then we had the Battle of LA as the night game on TNT. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about the postponement of the Houston Rockets game. So, due to contact tracing and James Harden being disinterested, you could say, the Houston Rockets do not have enough players to field a team. So,
yeah, they have 8 guys.
What do you think of the James Harden's action and the subsequent result of it?
I think that James Harden in general has really been acting up, and I'm not a fan of it. They gave up so much to get James Harden, and it was worth it. Obviously, we know how good James Harden is. But Houston, Daryl Morey in particular, has consistently found coaches, players, and has just built around James Harden and has done everything that he can to try to give James Harden a finals appearance or a championship. He went out, got Chris Paul, which was a very risky move. He went out, got Russell Westbrook, which also was a risky move. But doing things like going to a strip club or throwing basketballs at your teammate or just not showing up to practice is a giant middle finger to the organization that has done so much to elevate you as a player and just as an icon in basketball.
And it's hard to see why he would want up aside the owner's political statement, which we don't agree with, obviously. But I think that's a little harsh to the organization because, I mean, the owner doesn't really have any day-to-day involvement with the team. So there has to be something else that James Harden doesn't like about the organization, about how it's run. And it's just hard to see why he thinks there's a better option out there for him. I mean, this team is built for him.
Yeah, this team is completely built around him, and going to a team like Philly, for example, there's going to be a lot of growing pains and there's going to be a learning curve. I know Morey is there. I know Doc Rivers is a very good coach, but that fit with guys like Embiid, I'm assuming Simmons is in the deal, but a fit with a guy like Embiid and some of the other shooters might not be as sustainable or might not work as well as Houston, where you have guys like Christian Wood and John Wall who are great fits for the team.
I just think that James Harden has to realize that he's not leaving and he has to do what if he wants to actually care, if he cares about his legacy, he needs to step it up on a personal level because it's on him. If he puts in the time, he puts in the effort and focuses the next 6-7 months on basketball, there's no reason why this team can't be great. But if they don't, then it could be a sinking ship fast. I know John Wall and Christian Wood probably a solid roster, but if you don't have James Harden throwing out there, then I just really want to see James Harden playing well. I think we all do.
Yeah, he's such a talented player. I know a lot of people don't like watching him, but personally I do. And with guys like Wall and Christian Wood, this should be an exciting team to watch if everything goes right. But the key word is if. There are a lot of question marks and there are a lot of issues within the organization and involving James Harden that need to be addressed.
So let's get on to our actual NBA games that have happened. Let's start off with Nets Warriors. Now, the talk, how good can this team be? Because last night, Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant were a special kind of efficient and dominant.
Yeah, and both of them played 25 minutes. Kyrie had 26 on 50 plus, 40 plus, 100 shooting splits. And then Kevin Durant had 40, high 40, 50, and then 100% shooting splits with 22 points just in 25 minutes. Coming off of an Achilles injury with the frame and the way that he plays where there's a lot of jerkiness and stopping and going, the fact that he was able to actually do something like that and put a performance up like that is just spectacular. And I don't want to get my hopes up because this is the first game of the season. Golden State, while they are a good team, it's not like you're playing against Milwaukee or Boston. And, with the offseason that teams had, it's very unpredictable, the first couple games in the league. But if they keep this up, this is the best team in the East. Brooklyn is, in my opinion, top to bottom, when they're all playing at their best, like they were yesterday, the best team in the Eastern Conference. And my pick, if everything goes right, to make the finals.
So I couldn't agree with you more there. I think what we both thought about this team is it would take a while for them to grow as an offense. Both Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving coming off their injuries, and for Kevin Durant, an incredibly difficult injury to come back from. And we looked at that and said, "This is going to be a slow start to the season, but once they find their footing, they'll be rolling for the playoffs." But they're already rolling. I know the Warriors aren't the greatest test because they have never played together. Steph Curry has never played with Oubre, Wiggins, Wiseman, or Pascal. I mean, he played a little bit with Pascal, but not it's like 20 games. And Pascal didn't even play that much back then. So Steph Curry has about 100, 200 minutes of experience with the entire starting five. So I don't think it's the most fair comparison to look at, but just the sheer dominance and the sheer efficiency that they had. I know it's not really fair to look at a one game efficiency metric, but Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving would both be the most efficient player by a considerable margin over last year's Giannis. Giannis had a 31 PER, and Kyrie and Kevin Durant had a 34 and 38 respectively. Like they were efficient, they were dominant, they looked like they were their former selves, and I cannot be happier to see that. And I always warn against being reactionary because that's those roller coaster swings up and down of media perception. They always buy on hype, but I don't think it's overstatement to say that this team is going to be the best in the East. They are the
I
most
don't think
talented
so.
roster, and they have the best players, and they already look like they fit together. So, all of my problems and concerns I had about this team, I think were answered last night, and this team has the chance to be special.
I can't agree with you more. There is a lot of uncertainty, but it seems that Brooklyn has really put it together. And besides Kyrie and Kevin Durant, who obviously had limited minutes because they were up by so much, Dinwiddie, while he didn't have the most amazing game, he seems like he's solid. Joe Harris had 10 points on 40% from three. DeAndre Jordan had 11 rebounds. And then you have guys like Jeff Green, Torian Prince, Karooks, Jared Allen, Levert, Landry Shamit, and Luawu that will not always put together the best game, but one of them will always flash a good game at some period of time. So I really like this team. I like the supporting cast. They're deep and they are ready to go. And I think that this is their year to come out of the East.
Now, I've got two questions for you about the Nets lineup. And it revolves around Spencer Dinwiddie and DeAndre Jordan, and Karis LeVert and Jared Allen. Of those guys, who would you be starting? Because when I look at the team, do you want Karis LeVert to be leading the second unit? Because he offensively and defensively, he's a better player than Dinwiddie. And then with DeAndre Jordan, obviously Jared Allen's a better offensive player, but he's better defensively. So do you think they have it right with their starting five, or is there anything you would change?
I think I might switch. Actually, I think I would keep it the way it is just because Levert is a better scorer than Dinwiddie in my eyes and a more efficient scorer. So I think that while Dinwiddie is probably a better leader and playmaker, Levert seems more capable of leading a second unit without Durant and Kyrie than Dinwiddie does. But both of them are fully capable, and you could go either way. But I like the starting lineup of Kyrie, Dinwiddie, Harris, Durant, and DeAndre Jordan because having an offensive big like Jared Allen paired with Levert is very good, and I think they play well off of each other.
What I find really impressive is Karis LeVert's usage rate, 33% leading that second line. He was great leading that second rotation. And then even more impressive, turnover percent. Kyrie with a 5%, Kevin Hart with a 5%, and Karis LeVert with a 9%. Very efficient and effective offensively. I mean, this team, the ball movement, the shooting ability, like when you have everyone that team can space the floor pretty much. I mean, not DeAndre Jordan, obviously, but Irving, Durant are elite shooters. Joe Harris is special shooting the ball. I mean, you saw Kevin Durant. He was mad he wasn't shooting the ball more. Like when he passed up an open shot, Kevin Durant was mad because, man, like man, you gotta shoot. That's your best asset, man. So this team is special offensively, and it just opens up the court so
They
much
really
for
are.
Kyrie and Kevin Durant. So I really enjoyed seeing them. So let's talk about the Warriors, and in particular, there's two guys I want to talk about. Andrew Wiggins and Kelly Oubre. What did you make of their performance last night?
Andrew Wiggins, I think we can both say this, did not have the best performance. 13 points, 25% from the field, 33% from three, 75% from the free throw line, and a negative 28 plus minus. I think he is a very talented player. We can't deny that. And I think if you just look at this team, they've had such a high roster turnover. They're going to take a little while to acclimate because at least with Brooklyn, Kyrie and Durant have been there for a year. They signed in 2019. So they were able to kind of acclimate a little bit with the front office, with guys like Levert and Allen and Dinwiddie who have been there for years. But this is Wiggins' first full year here. Obviously, Wiseman, Oubre, and Steph Curry did not play very much with guys like Pascal, Poole, Toscano Anderson, Chris, Kevon Looney he did play with, but some of these other younger guys. So I think that while Wiggins and the Warriors in general had a very inefficient game, they still looked like they were taking the right shots. It just wasn't falling. And you're gonna have games like that, especially after such a short offseason and given the high roster turnover that they had. I think that as a whole, these guys, especially Uber and Wiggins, as inefficient as they were, when they're hitting their stride, they're going to be hyper efficient, and we will see 20 plus points from them if everything goes right.
I think in the first quarter, Steph Curry had, I think he had both the assist or would have been assist. He found Wiggins wide open the 3 point line, and I thought Wiggins' shot looked fairly good because he had a nice catch and shoot opportunity. He put the ball right where it needed to be, and he just got unlucky with some bounces. And it might be a little bit of rotation issues he had, but I think that his shot looked much improved. And then Oubre, his hustle was incredible to see. I mean, he was all over the court. He was picking up at the half court. He was a willing rebounder. And I think that poster he had was just representative of what he can bring to the team. And
Yeah.
I think obviously this team just comes down to shooting. They live and die by the three, and they certainly died by it today or that on yesterday. They started off the game like with 10 missed threes. Their first three came late in the first quarter, even the start of the second quarter. And it took them a while to get going. So one positive though, James Wiseman, what did you make of his first performance in the NBA, starting and playing fairly well once he got acclimated?
Yeah, it took him a little while. That first half of basketball, it wasn't the best. But towards the end of the game, 19 points he ended up finishing with. I know it was only 1 3, but he still hit a three, which was a surprise to me, to be very honest with you. He got 6 rebounds, 2 steals. He looked like he kind of looked like how he was advertised, a nice rim running center that will complement Curry, Wiggins, and Oubre very well. So I
He's
think that he does have a lot of room to grow, but he played very well, and this team is just going to get better with time. I said it again. They had such a high roster turnover, and I thought that they were going to have a similar path as the Nets. While the Nets were great, the Warriors will take a little bit longer to get acclimated.
and do you still think Wiseman, Okongwu is a better prospect or better fit with this team than Wiseman is?
In terms of defense, yes, because of versatility, and offense, they do have pretty similar skill sets, but Wiseman has probably a little bit higher upside.
Now, do you think this team is missing Draymond Green, or do you think that's not really a big factor for them and why they played so poorly to start the game?
I think they are, in my opinion, because he is the vocal leader of this team, in my eyes. He was picking players up when they were down, and he has great chemistry with some of the younger guys like Pascal, Poole, and Looney.
Oubre.
Oh, yeah, Oubre too. But yes, I really do think that he is missed. He's so versatile on defense. He would be able to get everyone in the right set. And then on offense, he's a good playmaker. He can find the open man. And while shot selection wasn't as big of a problem as it was more hitting their shot, I think that Draymond Green boosts the efficiency on offense of teams in general.
Now, before we move on to our next game, I just really want to talk about Andrew Wiggins a little bit more because I really think that he can be a really good player for this team. I think the fit's not bad. I think his versatility or his just skill set can really be harnessed by this team. But do you think that they should trade him at the deadline for someone like a Buddy Hield to try and get someone who maybe fits their system a little bit more, someone with maybe less upside but more proven production?
I honestly don't think so. Just because of the fact that having Buddy Hield and Klay Thompson next year will be, well, I don't think that will be the best. You want to kind of diversify a little bit, and having a guy like Wiggins who could be a more microwave three-level scorer and a more athletic player is probably better for the Warriors. So personally, I know Wiggins will have a slow start to the year, but the same will go with a lot of other players due to COVID and some of the restrictions in the offseason that they've had. But we know how talented Wiggins is, and he is a better talent overall than Buddy Hield. And because of that, I feel like Steve Kerr will eventually unlock his potential. If it's towards the end of the year or if it's next year with Klay Thompson alongside him, I don't think that Wiggins should be traded.
What are the odds that this is a finals preview for us? Because right now, I think that the Warriors is a little bit more of a reach to say that, but it's possible.
It is possible. They're pretty low in my eyes. Brooklyn from the East, they're not as low, but from the West, you got the LA teams. Both of them, while they looked a little rusty, look pretty good. And then you have some of the other teams like Dallas, Denver, Portland that we haven't even mentioned yet. So we got to see some of their production first before I can draw any conclusions. But I don't really see Golden State making it out of the West.
Let's move on to the LA game. Lakers
Woo!
dug themselves in a big hole, down 20 in the first quarter. Didn't make it any make it any easier for themselves. They had a bit of a more effective second quarter, but overall the shooting in this game was not great outside of one player, Paul George. What did you make of playoff P's performance today or yesterday?
I'm really happy that playoff P is kind of back in the swing of things. You can tell that he's motivated and that he was not going to take any more crap from the media and the fans about him being called Pandemic P or, I don't know, just a playoff choker. Playoff choker P. That's a new nickname. But I'm really glad that he finally stepped up. We know how talented of a player he is. We've seen in the playoff series back in Indiana, and then we saw that one MVP season in OKC of like we just saw how capable he is. And this team is built pretty well around him with guys like Ibaka, even Beverly, Zubac, Lou, Kennard. And I think it was really his time to shine. And I'm really glad that he's played well. He had a really good, efficient all around game. He shot 63% from three on 8 attempts. And while that number is never going to sustain because that's pretty much impossible in the NBA, that just shows how he's added more consistency to his game, especially with something like shooting and shooting efficiency, which were probably the two biggest weak points of his playoff run last year.
Well, he didn't give himself any favors in the media perspective because he had one play that no one's going to forget or let him down from last night. Throwing the ball straight at a referee out of bounds. No one even remotely over there wearing a white and blue jersey.
Okay, but to cut him some slack, the play I'm assuming was to have Zubac in the corner, and they were running a pretty like fast, more hurry up type play. So he expected Zubac to be there, so he kind of just instinctively did it.
But he was the first
And
man down the
also, I've
court. There
seen
was
that
no
mistake.
one ahead of him in the court. Like he should have known that there was no one ahead of him.
Still, I've seen that mistake made more often than you think. But those were also in like rec league games that I have with my friends. But yes, I've seen it where there's supposed to be a guy in the corner, the guy on the wing is swinging it, and he instinctively thinks that there is someone in the corner there, but no one is actually there,
I
and then
mean,
you just end up jacked in.
I could understand that, and that's what I initially thought. But when I look back at it, they're coming on the transition. There's no one ahead of him. Like no one has passed him. He is the first player back. Like
That's fun.
I don't know why he would have thought that there would be someone over there because everyone's behind him, and then he has the audacity to scream at someone for being in the wrong place. Because no, you're ahead of
Playmaking
everyone.
P. Playmaking P.
Play
Playmaking
making
P.
P. But overall, what did you make of this Clippers team performance? And do you think this is indicative of their season, or is this just because they match up against the Lakers a lot better than most teams do?
I think it is pretty indicative of their season. When a few guys are down, other players kind of step up. Zubac stepped up. Lou Williams, he played pretty well too. And then there were other guys like Patrick Patterson that had plus minuses in the high positives, but maybe didn't make such a scoring impact. And even Kawhi Leonard, who dropped 26, but it was a pretty inefficient 26. They had a pretty short offseason, and I kind of expected rusty basketball, but they really kind of blew me away with the fact that they were able to hang with LA, even though they match well. I thought that LA was going to take this the Lakers were going to take this pretty easily. But the Clippers, they were able to roll with the punches. They were able to fend off the Lakers' comeback. And I think that this is the second best team in the West. I'm not going to say in basketball, but this is the second best team in the West, in my opinion, at least. They
I can
have the
see that.
defense, they have the perimeter scoring, shooting, and they are a very deep team. Zubac, Williams, Kennard, Patterson, those are just four guys coming off the bench. And while some of the other guys like Reggie Jackson, Terrence Mann, and Kamingele and Amir Coffey didn't get minutes, I think if one of those guys goes down, you can slide one of them right in, and they will supplement them very well.
I still think the Warriors have a better starting five than them, but I don't think that they're a better team. I think that this Clippers team really has the potential because they have two top 15 players in the league. You could argue top 10. Uh, really special
15.
offensively. I said 15. You could argue 10. But
You could, yeah.
there's one debate I'd like to see raised. What would you do with Serge Ibaka and Zubac? Because if I'm the Clippers, I want to put starting Zubac because Zubac is a player who can thrive with much less usage, and partnering with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, letting them be the focal point of the offense. Because you look at both of them had incredible offensive ratings, but I think that Ibaka is a better player when he's more involved in the offense. That's why I would have him leading the second unit and having Zubac play with the first team just because he's more of a fit with Paul George and Leonard in the offense.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think they just wanted to test out Ibaka and his floor spacing, which Zubac doesn't offer nearly as much, because Ibaka did have a very efficient 15 points. And his floor spacing with guys like Beverly and Batum, who aren't the best shooters, kind of make up for that. And so having Beverly, Batum, and Zubac, who aren't the best shooters, with George and Kawhi Leonard, who could very well have off nights, will really hinder this team's floor spacing and perimeter shooting. But having a stalwart like Serge Ibaka, who is a good floor spacer always, and is a serviceable 3-point shooter at almost all times, just gives them a little bit less uncertainty, and gives them a more surefire way to get open drives for George and Leonard and open shots for George and Leonard as well, because those are the two offensive engines of this team.
Now let's talk about the Lakers a little bit. What do you make about their performance, and especially about their big two, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and then some of their new guys they signed, Dennis Schroeder, Marcus Gasol, and Montrezl Harrell. What did you make of the Lakers' performance last night?
Rusty. That's really the only way I can think of it. They're a little bit rusty. And while they are a very talented team, and while we saw some great plays from guys like Schroeder and LeBron and Davis, you can tell that the shortened offseason really kind of messed with them a little bit, and that they haven't had the full time to recover. Now, LeBron and AD, I knew that they weren't getting very many minutes, and the fact that they ended up playing 28 and 30 minutes respectively kind of caught me off guard. But they were still pretty inefficient. Davis. You told me Frank Vogel wanted Anthony Davis to shoot 6 threes a game.
That's what they said in the commentary.
Yeah, I don't think we should do that. Well, I know he's a great shooter, or not a great shooter. Well, he's a capable shooter, at least from the mid range. And while you want to build that confidence, he went 0 for 2 from three. And just looking at it, he was hitting most of his shots in the paint, and he was missing a lot of those mid ranges and fadeaways that he could generally hit. So he was a little rusty. Schroeder had some really good passes. They were a little inconsistent and sloppy at times, but he did have some great dribble drives where he was able to kick it out to the corner to guys like LeBron James, and I think even Markieff Morris once or twice, and try to get them open shots. So I think he will develop as a playmaker in this system. And while he won't give you the best or most efficient scoring numbers at all times, I think that he will rack up those assist numbers, and he'll get a lot of defensive rebounds because he is quick, and he'll be able to start transition and start the breaks when LeBron is sitting out. Then Contavious Caldwell Pope, I don't really know why he's a member of this team, and I don't know why he really started, but it was a pretty poor performance from him. He had as many turnovers, or he had more turnovers than he had assists, which is a terrible sign, and a -9 plus minus, which I guess is a little inflated because he was playing a lot of first quarter minutes. But I would rather start even Kuzma or Caruso or even Horton Tucker over Caldwell Pope at that other guard spot. And Gasol was probably the biggest disappointment for me. I expected so much out of him because I know how capable he is as a defender, as a leader, and as a very traditional big man, but he did not play up to par. But I think that once he has a little bit more time to acclimate, and if he gets out of foul trouble, I think he'll be back to his Toronto self. Harrell was really the only bright spot of the team. 17 points, 10 rebounds, pretty efficient, and he played the most minutes. And I think he'll be pretty solid off the bench. I just don't want them to get too reliant on him to where they're running the same pick and roll sets that are so predictable and easy to guard. And then some of the other guys like Kuzma played pretty well. Morris and Caruso did not play well. Wesley Matthews was just garbage. And Talon Horton Tucker needs more minutes.
Wes Matthew had an offensive rating of 0.
Wait, he played 11 minutes.
Yes. To put that in perspective, Marcus Gasol had an offensive rating of 45, and he had 0 points.
Wow. That means that when Wesley Matthews was on the floor, they didn't score a single point.
Incredible.
That is shocking. That is shocking.
Well, I think one problem that we can point out with Marcus Gasol is his usage rate was 3.5%. Wes Matthews had a higher usage rate than that. Alex Caruso's usage rate was 20%.
That's a little high.
I think that you need to balance your lineups a bit better because this team is big. If you're starting Davis, James, Gasol, that is gargantuan. That is the biggest backcourt and wings. Well, I don't know how to classify LeBron because he is everything, but that is the biggest trio in the league.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think that Schroeder provides a lot with his dribble drive, but he is an average shooter. I think you need to get someone in like a Buddy Hield. This is where Buddy Hield makes sense. Trade away Kyle Kuzma and maybe KCP to balance contracts if you don't have an exception. Boom. You've already balanced contracts. You get Buddy Hield. You already have the best starting five. Schroeder and Buddy Hield make a very capable backcourt, and then you have the best front court in the league. So I think this is a trade that would make a lot of sense for both parties.
Yeah.
You look, Luke Walton's already worked with Kyle Kuzma. Buddy Hield doesn't want to be there. It makes a lot of sense for all parties involved. And then I think that Anthony Davis, you don't need to have him shoot threes. He's already a capable shooter. So he's already going to draw you out because he has the option to shoot. He shoots when he can, not when he needs to. Or he shoots when he needs to, not when he wants to. And it'd be like telling Steph Curry, oh, you need to get more points in the paint just to be more diverse offensive scorer. No, shoot threes. Come on, do what you're good at. I mean, do you see Zion Williamson chucking up threes every game? No, he's scoring every point in the paint because you can't stop him when he does best. You play what you can do. If you don't, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, that's the best saying that you can say.
Yeah.
I mean, he is dominant. It's like slant boy, Michael Thomas. He's the best at running slants. I mean, he's great at a lot of things, but you don't have to prove that. Just do what he's good at. Run him on slants.
Or Harden, drawing fouls, taking step backs.
Taysom Hill, great runner. You don't need to be a pocket passer. Just run the ball. Do what you're good at. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Do what you're good at and win basketball games. So that'd be my message for Frank Vogel. Just know your players, make them play the best basketball. You don't have to prove anything. You're the Lakers. You're the defending champs. You've got nothing to prove.
So I have one question for you, and it revolves on the Clippers. You had them at 36 and 36 at the 8th seed of the West. Is that going to change for you? Do you have them a little bit higher in the playoff picture after what you saw? I know it's not a good thing to make inclusions this early, especially especially given that your predictions were made like a week or so ago. But do you see any change in your prediction?
I wouldn't go as far as to flip the Warriors and this Clippers. I think that'd be a little bit of an overstatement. But I think the Clippers are definitely a top 4 team. I thought that going into my predictions. My prediction was purely based on a lot of team morale and just chemistry. And I think that Ty Lue, I don't know if he's actually doing any coaching, so I don't think that really affects much, actually. So I think that they played really well. They played to their strengths. I think they were a bit rusty, but I mean, you look at Kawhi's metrics. I mean, he was solid. He wasn't anything special. He wasn't what Kawhi normally can be. But I think that just having Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, I think this team definitely deserves to be higher in my list. And I think they're definitely a top 4 team. And to be fair, I didn't say they weren't. I said they're one of the best teams, and they're still contending. That's what I said in my prediction. But I still think that this team might have to work over some issues if Kawhi starts load managing. If he doesn't, this team is easily a top 3 seed.
I can see that. Once again, there's no excuse for Kawhi to load manage at all. But one thing that kind of caught me off guard and that made me really happy as someone that's rooting for the Clippers is what Kawhi said last night after the game on Paul George being a leader. This kind of shows that Paul George is commanding the respect and has the respect of all of his teammates. Kawhi said just because someone makes shots doesn't mean they're a leader. Last year when he was missing shots, he was still communicating, playing the right way, playing D. It just didn't fall for him. You can't say a leader because you're making shots. And this shows that Kawhi is in full support of Paul George, that the two of them, being the two most important players on the team, are on the same page, and that Paul George has kind of solidified himself as a leader in this locker room. And we saw how that worked in Indiana. It worked out great. He almost stopped LeBron 2 years in a row. So hopefully he can replicate that again in LA with a better supporting cast and stop LeBron in the conference finals this time.
Now let's talk a little bit about the matchups today we have on the schedule. We're recording this right now at 6:40, and tip-off starts at 7:30, I believe, Eastern time, correct?
Mm-hmm.
7 is the first game. So we've got a couple interesting matchups today. Which games are you looking most forward to? We have Heat, Magic, Wizards, Sixers, Bucks, Celtics, Pelicans, Raptors, Trailblazers, Jazz, and Mavs, Suns.
Well, the Hawks are playing tonight too.
They are? They're playing the Bulls, right? I mean,
the majority
ESPN doesn't even show that.
Yeah, so besides the Thunder and Rockets, a lot of other teams are playing. Jazz Trailblazers will be fun to watch. Mavericks Suns, that's at 10:30 Eastern, and I know for a fact that my YouTube TV does not give me that game unless I buy League Pass. So GoFundMe for League Pass will be in the description, and we'll put it on the website too. Let's see. Hawks Bulls, I'm excited to see. They're two very young, exciting teams. I think it set the tone for how they play. Pelicans Raptors, I think that could be fun to watch. Siakam versus Zion will be a lot of fun. Bucks Celtics, our top 2 seeds in the East, both of ours. And you know what? If Boston comes away with this, I would just take Milwaukee completely out of the Eastern Conference Finals, which I think I did, and just run with the whole Nets Celtics notion.
I mean, that was our prediction at the beginning of the
Yeah.
season.
Because those are, if Boston wins, then the two best teams in the East are solidified as of right now. I don't really want to jump to any conclusions. But I think the sleeper game will be Wizards 76ers. That game I'm really excited to see. I'm excited to see Ben Simmons versus Russell Westbrook. Now that they both have shooters and floor spacing around them, it's going to be a dagger mouth of a game.
That was the game I was most looking forward to. Not watching because we don't have League Pass, but I will be trying my best to watch that game through some avenue, whatever. I will be looking through the entire dark web to find this game. But I think I have to ask you this important question. If the Bulls convincingly beat the Hawks, would you say that they're a playoff favorite over the Hawks?
No, because the Hawks have injuries. Like Capella's out. I think Okongwu is out. And let's see who else. I'm trying to figure out. But I know that they have
Dunn,
like,
Rondo, Snell, Capella, and Goodwin is the only thing on your injury report.
Okay, but Dunn, Rondo are two backup point guards who are supposed to mask Trae Young's defensive inabilities, and Clint Capella, our primary rim protector, being out, eliminates
He's not out. He's day to day.
But out for the game, eliminate a lot of defensive prowess for this team against a Bulls team that offensively is pretty good with Wendell Carter, Markkanen, Levine, White. So even if the Bulls convincingly win, I want to see them convincingly win with Wendell Carter trying to go up against Clint Capella, and with Chris Dunn against his former team trying to lock up Zach LaVine and Kobe White, and with Rondo being the playmaker and defender that he is, the impact that he can make. So I think we need to look at the context before we jump to any conclusions with that game right there.
And that's a fair approach. I'll be trying to watch Pelicans Raptors, but we will be for sure watching Bucks Celtics, and tonight Mavs Suns. We can't wait to recap those games and many more. But for now, that'll do for Triple Threat Podcast. My name is William Zell. Take care.